This video we're going to talk about patterns and mirroring. With that, there are two areas we can do this. We can do this within our sketch. So up here we have our linear sketch pattern, and you're going to see our mirror here, and we'll actually see a rotational sketch pattern down there. Or we can do it within features. I am a strong believer in doing this within features. I think that there are less issues when you run it that way. However, we're going to talk about both and show off a little bit of what they can do. With that, the first one we're going to talk about is the linear sketch pattern. So what we're going to have to do is we have to select what exactly we want to be patterning right there. We have to select the directions we want it to be patterning in, the spacing of them, and the number of them. And what we see here is we see that it creates that nice little sketch pattern for us. Now with this, if we don't have all of those different checkboxes checked, it just creates them as a pattern. It doesn't actually create what we're looking for here. It doesn't create the fully defined sketch that we're hoping to end up with. With this, what we can do is if we have all these checkboxes checked, and you'll notice here that I actually miss one. One of them gets unchecked here, right there. So I'm going to skip ahead. It will get it to fully defined. One piece here that I do here that I forgot about, we do have the ability to change that angle, so we can have an angle compared to the axis. We could also choose something other than the X or Y axis, and they don't need to be perpendicular. But with that, we get our full linear sketch pattern. We can use this and we can go ahead and extrude it or do whatever we need to with it in order to create our geometry. In this case, I choose to extrude everything in order to make my little pips on the Lego here. Now, alternatively, we could extrude one pip and we can use our linear pattern command within features. We'll notice here there's a mirror one, and again, underneath this little drop down for linear pattern, we do have our ability to change this into a rotational pattern, which we'll see a little bit later. But with this, what we're going to do is we're going to select our extrude that we're interested in patterning. We're going to select our two directions that we want it to be patterned in, set them both to 2 so that we have the correct number. And we have that piece done right there, and there's no underdefined. It's, in my opinion, quicker and a little bit more sustainable. If you need to go back and edit something, you don't have to be going into your sketches and editing them. With this, first thing that I want to point out, this is actually available on both of them. But what you see I've done here is I've actually gone into instances to skip, which can be very helpful if you've got this overarching pattern and you want to have a couple of pieces that are just not part of that. We can use that in order to skip that. So basically what I did is I selected this piece right here, which is coordinate 1, 2 for our overall piece. And I said, I do not want that to be in my pattern. Create everything other than that one. And as you see, when I actually go and complete it, I am missing that pip. Can be quite helpful. Can also be automatically done if needed. This is available in the sketch pattern. However, within the sketch pattern, you can't really undo it. It's really easy to go back in this one and undo and change the pattern. The only way we can edit the sketch pattern is by editing the dimensions that we created on it. So next thing that I want to talk about is we don't always have to pattern our features. So right here, what I've done is I've selected faces to do. You notice that there is the ability to do bodies or reference geometries, but bodies would be like if we have multiple different bodies, which we talked about before. If you're not extruding things in such a way that they are being merged instantly, you could select bodies to be set up. In this case, I've selected two faces to be set up. And what I'm going to show you here is that selecting two faces versus selecting the extrude is going to end up creating exactly the same thing. Easiest way I can do that is by proving it based off the mass. So we had 2.52 grams when I did a pattern of the shape. The faces, if I remove the pattern of the faces and I go ahead and create a pattern of the extrude, and I go back into my mask properties, it's still that same 2.52. It's exactly the same result. Okay, with this, I'm going to go back in and look at what happens if I want to update my shape, what I have to go through in order to do that. So in this case, I made my Lego, instead of a 2x2, it's a 2x3. And I'm first going to go into my sketch pattern. I'm going to edit that sketch. And you see there's a little 2 right here. I'm about to click on it. So we've got that little 2 right there. And what I'm going to do with that is I can select that, and that is just a dimension. I can just update it like any other dimension, and it becomes 3 long. And then I actually do have to go back into my extrude. Potentially, if I had no pieces other than the sketch selected, I could automatically do that. But we have the setup there, so we can add those two. Within my physical pattern, if I wanted to edit that, I can just click on my pattern, edit my pattern, and up that to 3. Another cool tool with this, you can see, is we have this up to reference option. So I can select, I want to pattern it up until it hits a certain point. Now if I go in and I make my wrong piece, if I go into my sketch and I make my sketch so that it is for a 4x2, it should automatically update such that I have a 4x2 as far as pips. So it knew to just keep patterning up until the point where it hit that reference edge. Just a quick piece that can make it so that if you're updating things, it will continue to hold true to whatever you intended for the pattern to be. Okay, with that, we're going to go ahead and add a couple of extra patterns. Not a ton more to talk about here, but I'm adding these little studs that used to be here on old Legos just to get a little bit of extra grip. I believe most new Legos, in order to make the piece simplified, they got rid of them, but I'm going to go ahead and speed through this. So I've gone and I have created my 2 patterns of parts. And what I'm going to go into now is I'm going to start talking about the mirror command. So within the mirror command, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select a plane to mirror over. I am thankful with my previous self that I set it up in such a way that I have my regular planes in the center of my object, makes it really easy to mirror over, and makes it so that if I update this, I updated the lengths, the mirror plane would still be in the center for me. With this, I go ahead and I mirror over that central plane, and what you're seeing here is I have only selected the pattern. And you'll notice, well, the pattern is just creating this piece right here. How come when I pattern it, I have 2 pieces? Well, when I'm selecting that pattern, remember that I said I wanted a pattern of 2. So that pattern actually includes the first piece as well as the second piece in there. So I could just select the pattern, or I normally select both the pattern and the extrude in order to make my life a little bit easier and make sure there aren't any unexpected errors going on. So with this, I did that one by physically clicking on the pattern. I can also get features by just clicking on the parts themselves. It goes ahead and adds those. I add my mirror plane, and I can mirror about my surface. I'm not going to go into this within our sketch plane, but it's exactly the same idea. We're mirroring over a line. We can mirror sketch components. All of the options are more or less the same. What I will take a second to talk about is circular patterns. So right under that drop-down, like I talked about before, circular pattern, you're rotating around a point. What I probably should have done here is had my piece so that I still had that cylinder on the bottom, because you can use either a cylinder, round the surface, you can rotate around the center, or you can rotate around some form of axis or line that you've created, or in sketch patterns, a point. In this case, I created an axis just so that I could rotate my pip around it. Again, this is probably not something that you're actually going to do for the Lego, which is why I didn't think to add it before. But we can create a pattern for our Lego for the pips on the top based off of that. It's just a circular pattern there. Hopefully, it's really not terribly different. Everything that we can do with the linear sketch pattern, the linear pattern we can do with the rotational pattern. It's just a matter of how we set it up. And then this is just showing that circular pattern and the mirror command are both within Sketch as well. Again, for the sake of time, I'm not really going to get into that within this video, but it's really exactly the same. Last thing I want to do here is talk about patterning cuts. So we were talking about patterning bodies and patterning the physical things we're adding. We can also do the same thing if we're cutting things out. What I'm doing here is I accidentally created this in such a way that when I added those pips, it moved my hole to the center of this little piece. So I go ahead and recreate that hole where I want it. But with this, I can now use my pattern on my little cut here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the feature and that cut from the features. And then I am going to pattern it up past the point where it's just the edge. And what I'm trying to show you here with this is that this cut is patterning the feature, meaning that it is patterning how I cut it so that it will be wherever my new location is. So this location, it can't just do that half moon cut because there's extra to cut about. And the reason we get that full circle here is because my original cut was a full circle, even though the full circle wasn't cutting through everything. Now, if I go through this and I select my shape, it's not going to do that full piece. And because it's not doing the full piece, it's actually erroring for me there when I try to pattern that cut. Same thing for linear sketch pattern we can do with circular sketch pattern. Linear feature pattern we can do with circular feature pattern. I can pattern my cuts. In this case, I'll go ahead and do 4, and I'll add it to every edge here. And it works just the same, inverted. Hopefully fairly straightforward for you. That is patterns and mirrors. Take care.